Greetings, Alamo Heights ISD families. We are getting situated here to put the presentation up in front of you. We appreciate that you're joining us today. Looks like we are ready to go. After the news of the governor's statements last week about a return to school in the fall and direction we received from TEA just yesterday, we come to you with an update about our plans to move forward and a plan for opening our schools for next year on August 17th. I'm joined this morning by Dr. Alfaro, our Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services, and Dr. Jimmie Walker, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I know that you all realize this has been a very challenging time for all of us, but I'm choosing to look back on March and April and May and now into June with a heart full of pride at the extraordinary efforts of our staff and our community to respond to this challenge. My team has been working around the clock since spring break week back in March to creatively problem solve and to innovatively design and implement a comprehensive at-home continuous learning platform to address the needs of our students during a time of emergency facility closure. That plan kept our teachers teaching and our students learning. In addition to all that, we worked to support our families to meet their needs through food distribution, device and material deployment, and counseling services throughout. I know that all of you recognize those efforts showcase the potential of this extraordinary AHISD community. Next slide. Our presentation today will outline our progress to this point, as well as outline our next steps in moving forward. Additionally, we will outline 2 options for our students to return to school for next year, and we'll outline our planning efforts to meet all students' academic and social and emotional learning needs through a very uncertain time. We had anticipated that we would be able to update you on public health considerations and guidance that we thought we would have received yesterday in the announcement from TEA and the commissioner, but that did not happen. We will have to update you on those at a future date when that guidance is released, but we need to continue making plans to move forward. Dr. Alfaro, will you please update us on the extensive process that we've utilized to this point to plan for our reopening in May?
Oh, sure. Our process for planning the return to school in August involved lots of people, lots of work, and lots of time. Outlined on this slide, you'll see our communication so far. We were trying to communicate with folks all along the way about where we were in our planning. So on May the 7th, we had a virtual meeting with all of our staff. On May the 21st, we made a video like this one and an email, and we sent it to the parents, along with a link for them to provide us feedback. On May the 27th, we sent the same information to our staff, along with the link to provide feedback about reopening. Then last week, as you hopefully saw, we surveyed our community to get a sense of input about reopening. Then we have this video today with more information. And then we plan a communication the week of July 24th, around that time, with final details about opening back up. Let's go to the next slide. So I want to reach back just a step. When the COVID-19 pandemic first hit the United States, all of us saw the news media reporting a variety of things, guidance from the CDC, or even locally, guidance from San Antonio Metro Health. And then later we started to see orders, right? So like the stay-at-home order from local officials. Well, you might ask, what's the difference? So in general, when you hear the term guidance, that should be interpreted as someone saying, well, in order to protect public health, you should do this or that. Or the latest scientific research suggests that this or that is helpful to promote public safety. That's guidance. On the other hand, you have orders, which is exactly that. Like, it's an order, it's a directive that must be followed. And that could be interpreted as something like, in order to promote public safety, you must do this or that. Now, in terms of schools like us, in the pandemic, we've had to deal with both recommendations and orders. Let's go to the next slide. So there are a variety of different entities, and we'll start first with guidance or recommendations that come from the latest scientific studies. At the national level, that comes from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. At the state level, that's the Texas Department of State Health Services, and at the local level, that's San Antonio Metro Health. And they all coordinate with the CDC. Now, then you'll notice there were superintendents. And so In March, it was the superintendents of schools that closed their respective districts or decided to extend spring break. They made decisions informed by public health, but at that time, there was no outside entity requiring them to close schools. Well, then you've got locally, you've got the mayor and the Bexar County Commissioners Court. Mayor issues orders for the city, and the Commissioners Court issues order for the county, such as the stay-at-home work safe order that largely governed the way we operated in this area all the way through June the 18th. Well, then you've got the governor, as we've seen, who can issue orders to close things or to open things statewide. Now, the governor's order supersedes city and county orders, as we've seen. Now, in April, for example, the governor proclaimed that all schools would not reopen for the 2019-2020 school year. That order superseded anything that local superintendents could have done, even if they wanted to at that time. Well, then you have the Texas Education Agency, or TEA, and its commissioner, Mike Morath. Now, they are tasked with working within any governor's order to create their own recommendations and directives for schools, such as when the governor in May declared that in June you could have outdoor graduations. He also said, but you're required to follow guidance that will come from TEA, which they issued guidance which had recommendations and directives for schools like us to follow if we wanted to have an outdoor graduation. Likewise, there's the UIL, or the University Interscholastic League, which governs extracurricular activities like athletics and band. So they too issue recommendations and directives. So when people ask, hey, are we going to have football games in the fall? Or, hey, will there be marching band? The answer to those questions depends on UIL's decisions and recommendations and directives. And so TEA and UIL coordinate and work within whatever the government orders say is possible or not possible. So as a school district, we've spent countless hours planning a return to school in August that's dependent on information and directives from these entities. And for the most of spring and the summer, we've lacked information and directives from them about what the fall will look like. So what we've had to do is plan multiple contingencies until the governor did make a formal announcement about schools, which he did on Monday this week after having spoken to legislators Thursday last week. Then just yesterday, as Dr. Bashara mentioned earlier, we anticipated that TEA would tell us within the governor's order how schools can operate with health and safety precautions, and we did not get that. We did, however, get guidance about what will be funded in terms of face-to-face and remote learning, which is helpful, but we still have not received directives about health and safety precautions. So let's go to the next slide. Now, I've said a lot, even within all of those, without having clear directives or guidance from governmental agencies about the fall, we still had to get started in May because there's a lot of work to be done. So our process included identifying the work and the work teams, identifying a community advisory team to give us input, and finally establishing a timeline. Let's go to the next slide. So our work team did countless hours of work, research, and planning. Now, the team is listed on this, and they're all district employees. And as they're doing their work, however, they consulted parents, teachers, and students based on whatever it is they were researching at the time. Let's go to the next slide, Jimmy. I'm going to click through three different images, and that is, we first compiled a master document of all the different things in all the different areas that we needed to be researching and gather input and make plans for. Click through the next one. We got lots of information. And then we had a timeline of meetings in which we worked through May and June, and we checked in weekly to report back to district administration for things to consider. So the next slide summarizes all that work, which essentially our approach was to organize work into 5 buckets. There's teaching and learning, as you might expect. There's whole child supports, which is like counseling, emotional support, etc., extracurricular things. Then the third is school personnel, then school operations, and then final general considerations. From all of this work, we took plans to our community advisory team for their input, which is the next slide. This is a list of our community advisory team. made up of one student. We've got parents, we've got teachers and staff who have all been actively engaged in leadership and service within our schools over the years, and who bring that experience to their perspectives and areas of expertise, such as health, medical professions, we've got counseling, we've got mental wellness, etc. Now, the group met twice in June, and we will meet once in July to give us valuable input and feedback regarding our plans for students and staff. So the next slide actually summarizes our work so far. A lot of work in May and June. Then meetings with our advisory team, which we will have, by the end of the summer, have met 3 full times. Then we have our summer intersession, which is kind of like summer school, but with physical distancing and public health strategies implemented, which we will monitor how that goes. Then last week, we surveyed everybody to gather input about the fall. We have this communication today that you're watching. And then our final target communication is July the 22nd, where we have details worked out for the community to know at that time. Hand it over to Dr. Bashara.
So I think it's obvious to you all by now that we have been incredibly busy with the work that's surrounding all of the plans and the decisions moving forward. And with all that being said, there still is so much uncertainty around all of this. But what I want to share with you right now is what we know, what is known. What do we know that helps us anchor our plans and our decisions moving forward? First, it is well known that COVID-19 will be here next year throughout the school year, and we don't anticipate that a vaccine will be with us, will be available to us by the fall. That means we know that we will need to attend to health and safety precautions to mitigate the spread and keep our students and staff safe. Next, we know that there will be no one-size-fits-all option for school, and we'll need to be open to providing our students and families with options. We also know that we need to adhere to guidelines around quarantining during an event of a positive case identification, and we'll also need to pivot fluidly to a time of remote learning if the need arises to close our schools for a short or even extended time. We will need to have protocols in place that contact trace the interactions of students and staff throughout the day to identify those who need to quarantine. We know that we will need to have clear health and safety protocols in place to protect our students and to protect our staff. And the idea of physical distancing in our buildings is daunting, but will be something that we need to attend to. I outline all of this to help you understand the complexity of our planning and the decisions that we need to make moving forward. Next slide, please. We also know a great deal about how our community is feeling about the return to school based on the close to 4,000 community responses that we received to our survey. In addition to survey responses, we read through almost 2,400 open-ended comments, gleaning a great deal of information about what we know about the feelings of our parents and secondary students and our staff. And the results tell us the following. And if you would kind of proceed through the different graphs with me, if you look on the graph on the far left corner of the slide, you can see that we have 60% of our parents who are comfortable with return to a face-to-face environment for school for next year. And directly to the right of that, across from that on the bottom right, demonstrates that even a higher percentage of our secondary students are ready to come back in that face-to-face environment. And then moving up to the top right of the slide, you'll see the graph depicts that around 46% of our staff are comfortable with a return to a face-to-face environment. Next slide, please. Additionally, our community told us that if given the option today, roughly 28% of our families would choose the remote learning option for their children. So I've outlined a few of the knowns in our plan to this point. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Alfaro to talk through some of the considerations regarding the continued uncertainties.
Thanks, Dr. Bashara. Now, all of us know that in this pandemic, we've all had to face some pretty severe challenges. On this slide, I'd like to outline 3 particular challenges that we know that we're going to have to face together in the fall. First, as a parent, you've had to decide the level of assurance that you need to have your children and family out in public places and the measures necessary for that assurance, like whether it's wearing masks or staying 6 feet apart from non-family members, not touching your face, washing your hands often with soap for 20 seconds. So just like you needed assurances for a certain level of public safety for you and your family, we need your help to proffer the same level of assurances for teachers and staff to return to work in a safe and healthy environment. Now, the second challenge that we'll face together is that people will get the virus. Students will get the virus, just like many of you have had family members or friends who've gotten it. We should be clear that direct exposure to someone who is diagnosed with COVID-19 requires a 14-day quarantine period, regardless of the results of a coronavirus test. If a teacher is in that position, you may see a substitute for a period of time. If a student's in that position, they will be required to stay home for that period of time. In all instances, employees who may have been directly exposed to the virus are required to report it to our district nurse immediately. Likewise, we ask parents to do the same for their households and children. Notify the school nurse immediately. And then finally, similar to what happened in March, April, and May, there may be a need to close all face-to-face school interactions if the spread of the virus spikes again to an intensity that we have to close schools for a period of time. And in that case, we would all go to experience remote learning again. Dr. Walker?
So the survey that we sent out, thank you very much for all of the responses and for your very thoughtful, open-ended considerations for our district. We asked you about 3 possible pathways for reopening in the fall. The first was face-to-face learning, where students would be back in our facilities with heightened safety and health protocols, or the option of remote learning, where students would continue to learn at home, much like they did at the close of this past year. We also ask you about a hybrid option, which would have students learning in our buildings part of the time, and then also at home part of the time. And the first option that we're taking off the table is the hybrid option. I'm going to explain why. At first glance, it seems as though this is a promising option because the high percentage of families that said they were comfortable with this. But in reading your open-ended feedback, it helped us understand a little bit more that this was actually no one's first choice. It was a second choice option. People said, I prefer face-to-face. If we can't do that, then hybrid's okay. Or we prefer distance learning, but if that's not an option for all, then hybrid is the second choice. We also heard from families that this is the most difficult logistically for families. And these are some of the comments from the survey. There were concerns about childcare, concerns about having multiple children on multiple schedules, transportation challenges, and concerns about extracurriculars if we were on a hybrid option. We also heard concerns from our teachers about the hybrid option. 41% of our teachers have school-age children. So there were concerns about childcare if the children and the teachers were on different schedules, which they would be in a hybrid option. Also concerns about planning, just the time burden on teachers to prep and plan for full remote instruction for maybe their morning group and full remote instruction for an afternoon group, in addition to full face-to-face instruction in those different sessions as well. So we heard from teachers that this was a very logistically difficult option. In your survey, we also heard just the wide variety of perspectives in our community. And these are, again, just some comments straight from the survey, where I prefer all in person back to the way it was, to our COVID case rates keep climbing. Face-to-face options are extremely risky. So with that, we saw growing interest in Heights at Home over just this last week. And you can look at the number of families that said, how likely would you choose this option, broken down by the number of students that would be on each campus. So what we heard from your feedback in May has helped us make improvements to our remote option, which we're now calling Heights at Home. So there would be remote learning at home, but there would also be a learning kit that would be sent home with students that would have more paper pencil activities such as books and workbooks and other resources needed for learning at home. It would be a return to traditional grading. We would have a high quality curriculum that would be equitable to the experiences of students in our buildings. What we heard from you was that the best part of continuous learning was the daily interactions that students had with their teachers and their peers. So that will continue in Heights at Home. And we also heard that there was a greater need for opportunities for more socialization. So in Heights at Home, there is an option for optional participation in extracurriculars. So what this means for next fall is that all of the families in our community will have two options to choose from. One will be Heights at Home from pre-K to 12 or a face-to-face option from pre-K to 12. I'll point out that in the right picture, those are two of our very own Alamo Heights teachers at Cambridge Elementary getting ready to welcome kids back for summer intercession. So it's our same teachers, it's our same buildings and face-to-face. It just feels a little bit different. So next steps. I think this quote sums up how so many are feeling in our community. We're unsure which will be the best option for our family. We don't want my son to have too much exposure and potential risk, but do want him to have a sense of stability and interaction with friends in his school routine. This is not easy. So here's some of the ways we want to help your family make this decision for your children. By July 1st, we hope to have from TEA face-to-face health protocols and new routines so that you'll know what will the daily experience be like for your child in our buildings. We'll have additional details about Heights at Home. We'll have directions for how to sign up for one of the two options. And we also know that you may need more than just written guidelines to make the best decision for your family. So we will have some administrators, some counselors, and some teachers available to help you talk through the unique circumstances with your child and on your specific campus.
As you all are well aware, there's no guidebook, no manual, no clear map for us to rely on to design a school experience for our AHISD students during a time of pandemic. But I can assure you that our planning will be responsive to the input and needs that have been identified by our staff, our students, and our community, and it will be thorough in our response to safety and health considerations. There will not be one perfect plan for everybody next year. There will not be a plan that makes everybody 100% happy. But I know for sure that our plan will support our students' academic and social and emotional growth during a continued time of challenge. There is groundwork that we need to cover with our students starting on day one, August 17th. And whether you choose to enroll your child in a remote at-home learning platform that we're calling Heights at Home, or enroll them in our face-to-face classroom with added safety and health precautions, we will be prepared to get back on that path for growth, for support, and to nurture their development. None of this will be successful, though, without our continued partnership that makes this district so unique. Back in March, I came to you with a community message that ended with my requests for some specific ways that you can support us. So as we move forward into this next school year, I'm asking for your unwavering support for my staff who will rely on your care and compassion regarding their health and their wellness during our reopening. As a community, we will need to ensure safety and healthy campuses safe and healthy campus environments so that our staff feels confident and assured to meet the needs of your child. Your care and compassion for our teachers, for our office staff, bus drivers, secretaries, custodians will best equip all of us to take care of your children in a face-to-face scenario. I ask that you help us maintain a healthy and positive attitude around all this. We are eager to see our students on buses, back in our classrooms. We are eager to support our learners in the social interactions that are so important to their development. And although we know that safety guidelines will preclude us from replicating the experiences of years past, I hope you can model and embrace excitement about getting back together on our campuses. I'm asking that all of us focus on being resilient in this new school year. As we know, we'll go through some times of quarantine and possible short or even long-term facility closures based on the recommendations of health advisors. That resiliency will help us maintain the flexibility that will be needed during a time of intermittent remote learning. That resiliency will continue to keep us strong and hopeful. And finally, I ask once again that our parents help your children understand the importance of practicing healthy habits that include physical distancing. All of us have a real need to be social, but there are safe ways to do that right now. As a community, we must be resolute in safety practices around hand washing, staying at home, especially if we're symptomatic at all, distancing from group settings, using PPE like sanitizer, masks, and even gloves at times, and showing care and concern for our school community, just like we do for our business community right now. This is a real opportunity for us to show compassion and care for each other and this amazing community. I will need your help. Every single one of us will play a crucial role in the success of our next school year. I need our teachers and our bus drivers, students, nurses, custodians, and all of our parents to commit to taking care of each other, to standing up for each other's health and safety, to ensure that we can return face to face the best way possible. Next slide. Just moving forward, I know you recognize that my team has an incredible amount of work ahead of them. We have curriculum work, scheduling work, campus logistic planning, and professional development to roll out to support our student teachers. I encourage you to check our website to continue to go to that frequently asked questions update where new information will be posted on our COVID-19 reopening tab. Look for information to come about signing up for which option will best serve your children in early July. And finally, watch for our final community update to be shared on July 22nd. As always, I conclude this message from a place of gratitude. I'm grateful for you and for the way that you participated in our survey and the way you reach out to send communication of support for our efforts. I continue to be so grateful for the partnership of this community. And finally, I am so grateful for the multitude of staff members, administrators, and teachers who have collectively dedicated hundreds of hours to planning to this point since summer started in May to ensure that our plans are responsive and thorough and best meet the needs of our incredible students. Thank you for being with us today.